you have a zero slope. So again, like I mentioned, they will give you this thing here, but either one or the other. So remember, horizontal 0, vertical undefined, okay, which is some more thing to remember. Looking at this thing here, which is again looking at 8, this is the next thing. They probably won't ask you to graph. They ask you to find the intercepts, right? The x-intercept and the y-intercept. So how do we find the x-intercept, or how do we find the y-intercept? Well, let's take a look at the x-intercept first, right? Reminder, to find the x-intercept, we need to let y equal to 0, and then we solve for x, right? All we're doing is basically wherever we see the y, we plug in 0. And again, 2 times 0 is basically anything times 0 is just 0, which is everybody see that the 2 times 0 disappear. Now I have 5 equal to 20, 5x equal to 20, right? Which is, how do I get rid of the 5? Which is, do you agree that I need to divide by 5, which is 20 divided by 5 is equal to 4, which is your x-intercept is 4, 0. Your y is 0, your x is 4, right? And again, if you find the x-intercept, you let y equal to 0. To find a y-intercept, what do we need to do? Well, to find a y-intercept, we have to let x equal to 0, and we have to solve for y, right? Which is basically wherever the x you plug in 0, which is, again, you have 5 times 0 minus 2y, which is you have 2y or negative 2y equal to 20. How do I get rid of the negative 2? I have to divide by 2, negative 2, which is negative 2 go to 20 will give me negative 10. Which is, again, it's equal. We don't need to flip anything, right? It's only inequality that you need to flip, right? But again, this thing here, solving, like I mentioned, algebra, math is all solving. So again, solving, we do a lot of solving, which is do the opposite operation. But again, looking at this thing here, question of how to find the slope on number 7 and how to find the intercept with number 8. Question with number 7 or 8 here. And again, for multiple choice, if you want, you can just take whatever the answer, and if they ask you to solve, you can just take whatever the answer and plug it in, right? Plug in the 0, 4 in for x and y to see if it's equal to 20. Or 0, negative 10, plug it in to see if it's equal to 20, right? So again, that's the other thing about the other thing about multiple choices. If you don't know how to solve it, you can take the answer and plug it in for solving item, right? But again, let's take a look at number 9, which is this thing here is right after our pandemic, right? Right after you take your midterm, which is this is your midterm material, which is chapter 5 material. How do we simplify this thing here, which is for A, what do we do, which is reminder, again, this is what we need to do is if we have an exponent, is basically we have to distribute the exponent in, which is reminder, this thing here, the exponent is only on the numerator. It does not associate with the denominator, which is and again, if you do this thing here, which is again 3 raised to the 4 power is the same as 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, 4 times, right? And again, reminder, if you distributive in, which is the power times a power, which is again, all you do is you take the 2 power, right? Not the power times power, a power raised to the power, all you do is you take the 2 power and you multiply them, which is again, 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27, times 3 is 81, which is again 2 times 4 is 8. And again, what do we do with this item here? What do we do with this x to the 8 and x to the 5, which is reminder, hopefully you guys still remember that if we divide, we subtract the exponent, which is 8 minus 5. That's why we have x to the 3rd power. Which is, again, this is our answer, which is, again, we have 81 x to the 3rd power, right? So again, same thing go with this item here. Same thing go with this item. We have to distribute the 2 in, which is we take the 2 and we times the 6, and we take the 2 times a negative 11, which is if you take that and you time them, which is again, all I do is I bring a 2 in, which is 2 times 6 is 12, and 2 times negative 11 to give me negative 22. And again, on the bottom is still x over 8, which is now what do I need to do? Reminder, the 12 minus, again, the 12 minus 8 to give you 4. And why did I move my y to the denominator? Reminder that if there's a negative exponent, it tells you that it does not belong on the top, which is if it doesn't belong on top, you have to move it on the denominator, which is that's why when you move it to the denominator, there's no longer a negative, which is my answer is x to the 4 all over y to the 27, just because of that negative exponent, right? They don't have any y, so there's no addition or subtraction of y. This thing here is just reminder of your negative exponent, right? Your negative exponent is tell you to, take the reciprocal or just basically move the item. Either if it's on the bottom, you move to the top. If it's on top, you move to the bottom. And again, you remember your rule of exponent, right? If you multiply, you add the exponent. If you divide, you subtract the exponent. If you have a power raised to the power, you multiply the two power, right? So again, those are your item, which is, again, this is what we have prior to our midterm, which is we took the midterm. And again, this is what we have in terms of chapter 5. Okay? Question with this item number 9. Well, those are the kind of questions they have. They did not give you a complex number, not complex number, a complex item to simplify. It's something like this in this nature. So again, you should be, if you can just review this kind of problem, you should be fine. Don't do any monsters one. Don't do anything with the bracket and stuff like that. Okay. So let's take a look at number 10, which is factor. This is the beginning of chapter 6. And again, how do we factor this thing here, which is, again, this is the beginning of our first meeting, which is reminder to factor a 4-term item, which is, again, they will ask you to factor, which is reminder when you factor this thing here, all you do is you factor out by grouping, right? Which is, again, if you have 4 terms, the only thing you can factor is factor out by grouping. And if you factor out by grouping, is basically they tell you take the first two and group them together, and take the second 2 and group them together, right? So if you group the first 2, which is, again, this is, if you group this thing here, you have 3x squared plus 9xy plus 4xy plus 12y. So if you group this thing here, which is, again, this is the actual group I have. Let me erase this thing here so that you can see, which is, again, in the first group, this is what you ask yourself after you graph. In the first group, what can you extract out, right? In the first group, do you agree that the 3, you can take out a 3, and an x, you can take out an x, right? In the second group, what can we take out, which is, hopefully you guys say that in the second group, you can take out a 4 and a y. So again, in the first group, I can take out 3x, which left me with x plus 3y. And again, in the second group, I can take out 4y, which left me with x plus 3y, which is, again, 4 going to 12 is 3. And again, if I take 1, and reminder, ladies and gentlemen, again, this thing here, reminder at this step, the thing in your parentheses have to be exactly the same, which is, again, what do I do once they are the same? All I need to do is take one parenthesis and put on the outside, whatever in my parenthesis, and put on the outside. And again, what the left over, which is the 3x plus 4y, put them in another parenthesis, which is, this is my answer. I factor them out, which is x plus 3y times 3x plus 4y, which is, again, this is similar to this problem number 4, similar to number 10, factor 4 term. We're using that for number 11, right? We do this, we kind of move away from number 10, and we adapt that number 10 to number 11, which is, if they ask you to factor If they ask you to factor, what do we do here? Well, ladies and gentlemen, looking at this thing here, reminder, we have a number in front of your x squared, right? We have a number in front of x squared, which is, if we have a number in front of x squared, hopefully you reminded that you have to do the AC method, right? So what does the AC method say? Well, the AC method says you take the 8 times a negative 11, that will give me negative 88. And now, is there two numbers multiplied to give you negative 88, but subtract to give you 18, which is, hopefully you guys say 4 times 22, because 4 times 22 is negative 88, or negative 4 times 22 is negative 88. And 22 minus 4 will give you 18. What do we do with this 22 and negative 4, which is, reminder, all you need to do is you need to rewrite your problem in terms of ax squared plus 22x minus 4x minus 11, which is that item on the back, which is now, as you can see, after you do this preliminary, now this problem is your number 10 problem, which is, what do we do from here? We need to group them up, which is the first two we put in one group, the second two we put in the second group. And again, remember, I told you guys that we need to include a negative, right? You cannot just group without a negative. Wherever that 4x go, that negative have to go with that 4x. So once you group this thing here in the first group, what can you take out? Well, the only thing you can take out is a 2 and an x, right? And in the second group, we cannot take out anything, but even though we cannot take out anything,